Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing renunciation of United States citizenship. I did a prior video talking about Senator Elizabeth Warren's proposed bill wherein she would like to see a heightened exit tax associated with those Americans who are renouncing their citizenship. Now, the thing to take away from this video and to understand is, first, renunciation of U.S. citizenship is not a petty thing. It is not something to trifle with. It is not something to underestimate. I see a lot of folks out there in the ether of the internet that talk about renouncing U.S. citizenship like it's like taking off your jacket or something. It's just no big deal. It's a very big deal. So those who are looking at it, you really need to contact a legal professional and get real insight into how the ramifications of the exit tax, of renunciation will impact you. Meanwhile, another thing, a question posed in the comment section of that video was, is it true that the State Department can refuse to let someone renounce? Yeah, I see this it's a bit of a misnomer out there in the ether that is the internet, this notion that state can just keep you from renouncing. I will say that while it may be possible to delay, I wouldn't say that it's correct to say that the State Department can refuse a renunciation. Let me get into what I'm talking about here. Thought of making this video after reading online on the website of the U.S. Embassy here in Thailand. That's th.usembassy.gov. And it's under the heading Renunciation. Quoting directly, renunciation of U.S. citizenship is a very serious decision and once approved by the Department of State is irrevocable. Potential renunciants are asked to carefully reflect on their decision before making an appointment to execute the oath of renunciation, which can only be executed at the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok. Okay, first, that's a Thailand thing, that it's Bangkok. Other embassies going to work a little differently, but long story short, yeah, one area where we have seen people say, oh, they're trying to thwart me from renouncing, it comes with the issue of scheduling an appointment. And look, appointments are done on first come, first served basis. I saw the appointment times for renunciation skyrocket. I think we did videos on that the appointment times became very difficult to obtain, especially during COVID. Well, appointments for things like tourist visa interviews became difficult to obtain during that time frame. That said, I'm not going to engage in a bunch of conspiracy theory, but I do see people's point where they say, well, you know, it looks to me like they're intentionally dragging their feet about getting me an appointment to go give my oath of renunciation. I see people's point there. I don't know that I necessarily buy it. I would probably chalk that up to more bureaucratic inertia than any sort of preconceived notion of trying to thwart somebody from renouncing. Quoting further, an individual seeking to renounce their U.S. citizenship must show that they fully understand what he or she is seeking to do. Okay, yeah, that's one area where there is an adjudicatory function to this renunciation process. It's kind of the inversion, if you will, of the consular report of birth abroad process, if you want to look at it that way, the CRIBA process, wherein you take a child, usually a child, to the U.S. Embassy to report their birth abroad and thereby register the automatic transmission of U.S. citizenship from the parent to the child. And look, strictly speaking, if the child meets the requirements under the law, then they are in fact an American. They're just not documented as such prior to the time they get the CRIBA. You could look at renunciation similarly and say, look, if I intend to do it and I'm of sound mind and I go through all the process, it's going to happen. They're not allowed to keep that from happening. Well, fair enough, but they are the fact finder. And they do have a fact finding function wherein, you know, they do need to adjudicate whether or not the person is compos mentis for purposes, you know, they have the capacity for the purposes of citizenship renunciation. Do they understand what they're doing? So in that regard, yeah, there's going to be, perhaps you could call it a delay associated with the adjudication by a consular officer as to the mental capacity of the person looking to renounce. Quoting further, including the consequences such as losing the right to reside in the United States without documentation as an alien, as well as show that they are acting of his or her own free will without undue influence from others and without reservation. Again, these are adjudicatory functions that are undertaken by consular officers. In past cases where we've seen renunciation, I've actually seen consular officers say, okay, you know, I'm not going to let you do this today, but I want you to come back a week from now if you still want to do this after I've explained. You know, they usually have an explanation session where they explain all the ramifications, legally speaking, of what you're doing. And I've actually seen them send people away and say, okay, you're going to come back in whatever time interval. And if after that time interval, I am satisfied that you understand what's going on here and that you are fully competent, you have capacity, then and you're not operating under someone else's undue influence or something, then and only then will I then make the determination that yes, of course, you have the capacity to do what you're doing, administer the oath of renunciation, and on we go, you know, with the further steps. So while no, they can't exactly refuse or not allow someone to renounce who wants to renounce, there is a process to adjudicate whether or not that person is in fact of sound mind and has the capacity and is not being unduly influenced to making a really big decision in their life. Because really, citizenship renunciation is a big deal. Even so-called accidental Americans, kids that were just born in America, live there a couple of weeks and move abroad, losing a U.S. passport's a major travel document by any meaning of the term, by any definition of the term. It's not insignificant. Losing the ability to live and work in the United States is not an insignificant benefit. The privileges and immunities of United States citizenship, not insignificant benefits. So again, yeah, is there a process for ascertaining whether or not someone has capacity to renounce these benefits? Yes, there is. Can they refuse if someone meets all the requirements? Not really. They basically have to go ahead and administer these things, and that person can thereby shed their U.S. citizenship.